Evelyn considered the old recordings a few moments longer before pressing the play icon. A hush fell across the dim archive chamber as a grainy image flickered to life, revealing a wide stretch of moonlit terrain, the sky above thick with alien carriers. For a second, it was hard to see anything of significance, just shadows moving across a field of rubble, distant lights flickering in arcs that might have been weapons fire. Then the camera focused on a column of humans, their faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion, marching forward as if they were possessed by some unquenchable force. Evelyn felt a tremor move through her. She had accessed thousands of war records from countless species, but these tapes, hidden away for centuries, had an intensity all their own. Here, in black and white, was the famed final stand of humanity against the Droll. It did not look particularly grand, just lines of battered soldiers and half-broken vehicles crawling through thick mud. Yet the tension was undeniable. Everything that came after, the Droll's annihilation, the abrupt pivot in galactic power, stemmed from the unstoppable momentum captured in that single, ghostly sequence. She paused, letting the images cycle in her mind. The entire galactic community knew some version of the story, how the Droll, once lauded as militaristic geniuses, had tried to subjugate Earth. How that gamble erupted into a fury none could have anticipated. How the Droll swiftly vanished. But the official records were sketchy, peppered with contradictory claims. Some insisted humanity had unleashed forbidden weapons. Others described an unholy rage boiling over. The Droll were not the only ones to vanish in the aftermath. A half-dozen smaller empires that aided them disappeared into the swirling dust of collapsed alliances. No one was sure exactly what humankind had done. Scholars from 100 civilizations speculated that humans had tapped into horrifying sciences or bartered with interdimensional powers. Yet through it all, Earth refused to offer any official statement. Instead, they withdrew from many joint councils, leaving the rest of the galaxy to guess. And so the truth of that war had become a tapestry of rumors and tall tales. Evelyn was determined to pull on the frayed threads until the tapestry unraveled and revealed the genuine shape beneath. She was not human herself. She came from the Narasi, a species known for devout curiosity that sometimes bordered on obsession. Her ancestors had never warred with Earth, and as a result, the Narasi maintained cordial relations with humans. Even so, Evelyn had discovered that many humans, and especially their older generations, were reluctant to discuss the Droll fiasco. She understood their caution. It was not a proud moment for their species, or so they claimed. But she suspected they were also trying to shield the galaxy from the full nature of what had occurred. That only drove her curiosity further. She spent months combing through hidden archives, forging the right connections, trading expensive favors for a single battered data slate or a snippet of eyewitness testimony. The pieces gradually formed a mosaic in her mind. She decided the time had come to see it with her own eyes, or as close to that as possible. If there were Droll relics still out there, or living Droll in hiding, she intended to find them and ask the questions that plagued the galaxy. What did you do to provoke such fury? And why did humans respond the way they did? She left for the frontier zones, where once powerful empires had collapsed into unclaimed star systems. Many of these had once been Droll vassals, yet precious little remained beyond scattered ruins. Those ruins told a story of savage devastation that spoke louder than any official text. On one planet, Evelyn found a burned settlement, its buildings melted by intense heat. On another, she stumbled upon a Droll war memorial that had been vandalized beyond recognition. But the more she saw, the less she could piece together a coherent timeline. Did humanity strike each world personally? Or had local populations turned on the Droll themselves once they saw an empire weakening? She needed tangible leads, and all she got was scattered hints of an unearthly onslaught. No official armies seemed to have marched here. It was as if some unstoppable wave of destruction had rolled across star systems in only a few weeks. She could not wrap her mind around the scale. Conventional invasions took years. Even the Drawl, famed for speed, needed strategic planning. Yet these war-scorched landscapes suggested a near-instant apocalypse. That implied technology or a tactic the galaxy had never fully known about, or else a burning fury that defied reason. Her break came when she discovered an encoded device in a deserted bunker. The region was a wasteland of rusting war machines and half-buried turrets, the air thick with radiation pockets. Evelyn braved that toxic environment in an environmental suit, stepping carefully around craters. Within that bunker's cracked walls, she spotted an old Drawl terminal. It had no power, but she found a hidden compartment where a small data module glowed with a faint internal battery. She pocketed it and hurried back to her ship, ignoring the roars of wind that threatened to tear her faceplate free. She spent days in orbit, decrypting the device with the help of her Narasi-coded AI. The data, though partially corrupted, referenced an old Drawl warlord named Vash Halar and a catastrophic miscalculation about human psychological thresholds. Evelyn's heart pounded. Her research had turned up this name before, always with fleeting references to experiments or unthinkable cruelty. From what scraps she had gleaned, Halar was among the Drawl's most feared strategists, perhaps the very one who orchestrated the confrontation on Earth. The final lines of the data module read: "We believed we could push them further. We did not grasp that fury is not a resource easily measured. By the time we realized, it was too late." She traveled next to the uncharted zone at the edge of the old Drawl core territory, rumored to house a station that had once served as Halar's personal command post. She discovered the outpost half hidden in the rings of a barren gas giant, a darkened, pitted structure drifting among the ice debris. Its docking clamps had decayed into twisted lumps of metal, forcing her to rely on a precarious mooring. She stepped inside through a half-broken airlock, flashlight scanning the corridors. Silent, stale air greeted her. The station was largely intact but lifeless, as though locked in time. She carefully advanced, her boots echoing on metal floors. Then, unexpectedly, her flashlight caught the reflection of mechanical eyes. She startled, nearly dropping her weapon. A caretaker droid stood in the corridor, unmoving, caked in dust. When she shone the light on it, the droid chirped weakly, as if awakened from a dormant state. She reached out in cautious greeting. The caretaker's voice warbled from a rusted speaker, "Is the war over?" Evelyn swallowed her panic. This was beyond her wildest hope. A caretaker droid, probably left behind for centuries, might still hold records in its memory banks. She gently assured it that yes, the war was over, and the Drawl Empire had collapsed. The caretaker seemed to process this, its mechanical eyes flickering. Then it said, "If the Empire is gone, I remain bound to tell the story." "Are you a Drawl officer?" Evelyn answered honestly that she was Narasi, an archivist. The droid paused, then it beckoned her down the hall, as if ready to deliver the final log from Vash Halar's reign. They ended up in a cramped command room filled with terminals, half of them shattered or gutted. The caretaker rummaged through debris until it found a backup console connected to an antiquated power source. Evelyn watched with mounting excitement as the caretaker activated it, revealing a flickering display. Strange Drawl text scrolled across the screen. The caretaker turned to her, voice monotone but earnest, "Vash Halar's final logs. He was not a kind master. He demanded I remain to preserve his testament." Evelyn tried to read, but the text moved in bursts of static. She pulled out a portable translator, hooking it in. A rough translation emerged. Halar's words flowed across the display, "We have discovered a secret to harnessing fear. Humans respond to loss with anger, but if we can manipulate that anger, we can break them. Their emotional threshold is rumored to be intense yet fragile. We must push them to the edge, then shatter their morale. The project on Earth escalates tonight." Evelyn felt a chill race down her spine. She read further. The log recounted the Drawl infiltration, kidnappings, sabotage, attempts to provoke Earth's governments into fracturing. But apparently, Halar felt they needed a bigger spark to extinguish humanity's fighting spirit. He referred cryptically to the Scar Protocol, a plan so monstrous that even some of his sub-commanders hesitated. Halar's final entry dripped with confidence. By inflicting a personal atrocity upon them, we will paralyze their capacity for unity. The details are in place. Soon, the humans will face ruin beyond what they can endure. Evelyn read the caretaker's mechanical face, searching for some sense of empathy. But it was just a droid, after all. Still, it offered a solemn comment. Halar's plan did not go as intended. The humans did not break. They only became unstoppable. Evelyn closed her eyes, hearing the caretaker's words echo. She pictured the footage she had watched of battered soldiers marching on that moonlit terrain. She realized she was on the brink of discovering exactly what had happened. She needed more information, though, about the Scar Protocol. She asked if the caretaker had additional data. It walked over to a locked compartment in the corner, prying it open with mechanical fingers. Inside lay a single metallic cube etched with Drawl script. This is Halar's private record. He would recite his mind into it. I cannot decipher it, but I sense you might. Evelyn gently accepted the cube and thanked the droid. She recognized that unsealing its contents might reveal atrocities that changed her perspective forever. She returned to her vessel, mind racing. Thanks to Narasi cryptographic tools, it took her only a few hours to decode the cube's memory. The revelations it contained were a testament to cruelty and arrogance. She saw detailed instructions for infiltration teams targeting Earth's major cities. She saw references to forcibly turning Earth's populace against one another. Then she found the vile core of the Scar Protocol, a plan to detonate a weapon in the heart of a critical human colony, a colony on the outskirts of Earth's solar system known as Tantalus. The Drawl believed Tantalus was not just a strategic target but a cherished population center, housing millions of families. Halar's logic was that by erasing Tantalus with a single, dramatic strike, humanity would be plunged into despair, fracturing their alliances and their will to fight. The Drawl infiltration teams were sent to sabotage the colony's defenses, ensuring the weapon would meet little resistance. The final step was infiltration of human communications to broadcast the destruction across all Earth channels in real time. Halar's voice recorded in the cube was chilling in its confidence. He spoke of humans as if they were mere lab subjects, so easy to dissect, they will cry out in horror, and their fury will turn inward. They are too emotional to unite. We shall break them from within, and Earth shall fall soon after. She read on, forcing herself not to recoil from the vile delight in Halar's tone. Then the logs shifted to the aftermath. The weapon was detonated, Tantalus burned, and transmissions of the colony's final moments were broadcast. But something went wrong from the Drawl perspective. Instead of humans turning on each other, they turned outward with a singular rage. The Drawl infiltration teams found themselves exposed almost instantly. Halar's logs captured the confusion. Impossible. The humans are not grieving in the expected manner. They are outraged, cohesive, flooding into the stars with a new, terrifying purpose. Entire Drawl detachments are lost. Their technology does not appear advanced, yet they push forward relentlessly, unstoppable. The desperation in the text grew, they surpass every front line. They bomb our supply lines. They do not relent. Even if we surrender, I believe they would still come. This is not a rational war. This is a fury that devours logic. Evelyn paused, breathing quickly. The scale of Tantalus's tragedy staggered her. Thousands, maybe millions, obliterated in a single stroke. She felt tears gathering in her eyes as she imagined the final hours of that colony. No wonder Earth had never truly spoken of it afterward. The wound must still be fresh even centuries later. She resumed reading. Halar's final entry was borderline incoherent: "We cannot survive this. We awakened something in them, something primal. My empire is powerless. They attack every base, every planet. There is no negotiation. They advance with unstoppable ferocity. If you read this, know that we died in the fires we ignited." Evelyn sat in silence, the metallic cube resting on her console. She felt anger welling within her for what the Drawl had done, and an uneasy awe at humanity's devastating response. This was the truth behind the Drawl's downfall. Halar's plan to break Earth's spirit backfired, unleashing a wave of retribution no strategic genius could contain. The caretaker droid had not lied, the humans did not break. They became an elemental force. She thought of those battered soldiers in the old recordings, the silent determination in their eyes as they crossed a cratered battlefield under heavy fire. That was the face of unstoppable fury. She also remembered the rumors that after Tantalus fell, the humans unleashed a series of coordinated assaults across Drawl space. But official records never detailed how swiftly the Drawl were wiped out. Now she realized it took mere weeks. Perhaps the Drawl had never fathomed that an entire species could channel heartbreak into unstoppable vengeance at such speed. Human technology might have been overshadowed by Drawl hardware in standard conditions, but the humans overcame that gap with an iron unity and a willingness to sacrifice everything. There was a rumor that the humans took every last Drawl system, forcing them to either flee or surrender, but surrender was rarely accepted. The Drawl who capitulated discovered too late that Earth was in no mood to show mercy. Shaking off her daze, Evelyn decided it was time to return to human space. The truth was in her possession. Yet she needed closure. She needed to speak with those who had survived Tantalus, if any still lived, or with their descendants who might recall the stories. Gathering up the caretaker droid as a witness, she set her course for Earth's solar system, specifically for the Tantalus memorial site she assumed must exist. Her star charts indicated a broken planetoid drifting where Tantalus once orbited. If the memorial was anywhere, it would be around that shattered grave. She spent the journey in a restless haze, replaying Halar's logs in her mind. She pictured the Drawl weapon annihilating children, families, entire neighborhoods, all in a single monstrous flash. She understood how that cruelty might have pushed humans across some threshold. She began to wonder if the fury that followed was not simply the result of Tantalus but also centuries of underestimation, years of hearing how fragile humans were. The Drawl had triggered something they could never hope to contain. Upon arrival at the Tantalus grave, Evelyn felt her chest tighten. The colony world was gone, replaced by a ring of debris. Some chunks glowed faintly, likely from residual radiation or meltdown reactions that had never dissipated. As she navigated her vessel, her scanners picked up a faint artificial signal. Indeed, some type of satellite or memorial station drifted at the edge of the debris field. She followed the signal carefully, weaving through scattered rock fragments that spun in slow orbits. Eventually, she came upon a structure. It was unlit, sleek, and shaped almost like a shard of black stone. Her AI confirmed it was constructed from advanced Earth alloys. Evelyn opened a communication channel, identifying herself as a Narasai researcher seeking to honor the memory of Tantalus. Moments later, a single docking bay extended like a welcoming arm. She eased her ship inside the black structure, stepping out with trembling anticipation. A faint hum of machinery surrounded her, the corridor lights illuminating in response to her movement. She half expected a security detail to greet her. Instead, a solitary human stood waiting, eyes shadowed by the overhead glare. He was tall, wearing a plain black uniform with no apparent markings. After a brief silence, he introduced himself as Commander Porter of the Tantalus Memorial Watch. His voice was subdued. He didn't ask how she found them. Presumably, he expected that those who came here had already uncovered the secrets. He merely said, "You came to see the aftermath." We don't usually get visitors from beyond Earth's alliances. Evelyn nodded, explaining how she had discovered the caretaker droid in Halar's personal logs. She admitted she wanted to understand, to pay respect, and possibly fill the historical void that plagued the galaxy. Commander Porter's expression did not soften, but he invited her further into the station, promising to show her the Hall of Remembrance. She caught a flicker of pain in his eyes when she mentioned Halar's name. Tantalus was not just a piece of history for him, clearly, it was personal. They walked in silence through corridors lined with holographic panels. Each panel displayed images of Tantalus before the disaster, thriving cities under a blue sky, farmland, sprawling gardens, families laughing. Evelyn's throat tightened as she realized these images were more than centuries old. Humanity had advanced technologically in the time since, but they had never replaced Tantalus. Instead, they kept these old images as a testament. Commander Porter paused at one panel, focusing on a portrait of 3 children holding a small dog. My ancestors were on Tantalus when it happened. This is the only family picture we have. The children died in the explosion. Only one adult, my great-great-grandfather, was off colony at the time, returning from a supply run. He enlisted in the war the same day he learned what happened. They say he never spoke another word until the final drawl system fell. Evelyn felt tears pricking her eyes at the quiet heartbreak in his voice. She offered her condolences, though it felt insufficient. Porter nodded and continued forward. At last, they reached the Hall of Remembrance, a vast chamber ringed with pillars inscribed with tens of thousands of names. The air was stale yet reverent, an almost church-like hush filling the space. Evelyn walked among the pillars, reading name after name. Families, children, entire generations that never had a chance to flee. Commander Porter explained that the Drawl infiltration had sabotaged Tantalus's planetary shields and defense grid, leaving them vulnerable. His words trembled with anger. They wanted us to witness the colony's destruction in real time. They broadcast it to Earth, to the entire network. We heard screams, saw the flames, and then, static. After that, there was no going back. The Drawl had to pay. Evelyn listened quietly, recalling the caretaker droid's logs. Halar truly believed that such a catastrophic act would cripple humanity with hopelessness. He had been catastrophically wrong. The Drawl's logic overlooked that humans drew strength from their grief, forging it into an unbreakable will. She asked Porter if there had been attempts at a negotiated peace. Porter's gaze darkened. The Drawl never showed remorse. Some tried to negotiate when the tide turned, but we weren't in a forgiving mood. That's the simplest way to put it. We gave them no quarter. His tone was flat. Evelyn understood that the weight of Tantalus's demise left no room for mercy at the time. He then led her to a smaller side chamber. Within it stood a tall monolith etched with silhouettes of star systems. Porter said these were the Drawl worlds that fell in the subsequent onslaught. Each silhouette corresponded to a planet or station the human fleets had attacked, culminating in the Drawl homeworld, whose silhouette was carved larger, with a deep scar across it. The scar across the Drawl homeworld symbolized the final confrontation, when Earth's fleets unleashed a torrent of destructive power. There was no official record of a single Drawl survivor from that planet. Evelyn shivered at the thought of such total war. She braced herself and asked, "Commander, how did you do it so quickly? The Drawl possessed formidable technology. Even with your rage, how did your fleets conquer them in mere weeks?" Porter's face grew grim, and for a moment, she thought he would refuse to answer. Then he spoke softly, as if reciting a confession. "Humanity has always been inventive in warfare. But that alone wasn't enough. We tapped into something else, an absolute willingness to fight with no concern for loss or moral restraint. Our leaders gave the order, no negotiation, no surrender accepted. We used hyper-accelerated strategies, sacrificing entire ships to break their lines. We harnessed every ounce of technology we had, from planet-cracking bombs to weaponized micro-AI. And we never stopped to count casualties. We pressed forward every hour, every day. That approach is not rational. It's beyond rational. It was pure fury. In short, we broke them because we refused to stop until they were ashes. Evelyn exhaled slowly, digesting his words. This was the answer she had been seeking. It wasn't a superweapon or hidden dimension that eradicated the Drawl. It was the unleashed force of a species that could not forgive. She felt equal parts awe and horror. Humans had turned heartbreak into unstoppable momentum, transforming entire fleets into instruments of retribution. She understood now how that story was overshadowed by rumor. No one wanted to imagine that a species so culturally rich and empathetic as humans could commit such raw devastation when provoked. Porter laid a hand on the black monolith, gazing at the etched silhouettes. "We're not proud of it," he said quietly, "but we're not ashamed either. When you exterminate a colony full of our families, you awaken the darkest part of us. The Drawl discovered that too late. We'd rather no one else ever forces us to reveal that side again." Evelyn decided to show him the caretaker droid she had brought along. She asked if it would be permitted to share Halar's logs with him, so that Earth could have a final piece of closure about the man who orchestrated Tantalus's destruction. Porter hesitated, then allowed it, cautioning that the logs might stir painful memories. Together, they played the caretaker's audio. Halar's voice emerged, cold and self-assured, explaining how thoroughly he expected the humans to fracture under heartbreak. Porter's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists. Then came Halar's final recorded admission of defeat, his realization that the humans were unstoppable. Porter closed his eyes, letting the caretaker's metallic recounting fade. "So they wanted to break our spirit," he muttered. "All they did was unify us more than ever." Evelyn glimpsed tears at the edges of his eyes. "You see now," he whispered, "why we can't bear to talk about it. Because it's too big, too raw, even centuries later. We lost everything on Tantalus, and in the same breath, we extinguished an entire empire." He tapped a panel on the wall. A new hologram appeared, showing black and white footage from a human warship's vantage point. Drawl battleships burned in the distance, starfields choked by debris. A voice, likely a human commander, crackled over the feed, issuing an order that the Drawl be pursued to their next planet with no delay. Evelyn could almost taste the adrenaline that must have fueled those fleets. She found herself imagining the terror the Drawl must have felt as their carefully planned war of aggression flipped on its head. The caretaker droid, seemingly moved by some vestige of awareness, commented, "Warlord Halar believed the best approach was to exploit the humans' hearts. He was correct about their deep emotion. But he never realized that heartbreak can become the greatest weapon, if harnessed." Porter gave a bitter laugh. "If you ask me, it's best no one tries that again." Wanting to honor the memory of Tantalus, Evelyn asked permission to record a final message from this place, an account that might at last bring clarity to the rest of the galaxy. Commander Porter took a long moment to respond. "You can record it," he said, "but we ask that you not share it widely. Let the galaxy keep its rumors. We don't want to encourage another species to test us in the hopes that we've grown softer. And we certainly don't want them thinking we're eager to repeat that savage chapter." Evelyn nodded, respecting his stance. She made a short video, a quiet narrative of Tantalus, the destruction unleashed by the Drawl, and the unstoppable fury that followed. She ended the recording with a view of the countless names on the pillars. It was heartbreak made tangible, each name a fragment of a life cut short. She then quietly archived the video under a coded lock, out of respect for Commander Porter's request. She could not bring herself to keep it hidden entirely, but she would ensure it remained accessible only to serious researchers who sought truth rather than sensationalism. Her next stop, with Porter's permission, was Earth itself. She had visited Earth once before, finding it vibrant and diverse, full of art, music, and constant chatter. But now she perceived a solemn undercurrent she had never noticed. From the vantage point of Tantalus's tragedy, she realized that every city, every family line might carry the echoes of that ancient war. She landed in what was once a major historical district, New Buenos Aires. The people were friendly, inquisitive about her Narasai heritage, quick to share stories about life on Earth. Yet when she delicately probed the subject of the Droll War, most turned guarded. Some simply said they'd lost relatives in Tantalus. Others deflected politely, explaining that dredging up old pain did no one favors. Evelyn perceived that the new generations treated Tantalus almost as a legend of ultimate loss and ultimate retribution, proof that humanity could be monstrous if pushed too far. In the city's central plaza, there was a small statue commemorating Tantalus, depicting an outstretched hand gripping a broken gear. It bore a plaque that read, "Never again." She stood there for a time, letting the traffic of pedestrians swirl around her, each person living a normal life. She understood that every one of them, if threatened with the same horror, might become the soldier in that black and white footage. Days later, she sat with an older human named Jonas, who claimed to be a descendant of a Tantalus survivor. They met in a quiet library. Jonas had watery gray eyes and a tremor in his hands but spoke with firm conviction. He described the rumor that once the Droll lines began to crack, human fleets demanded that word be spread across all Droll territories of what had happened on Tantalus. They wanted the Droll to know exactly why the unstoppable wave was coming for them. Jonas recounted how some Droll governors threw themselves at human mercy, begging to be spared. But the humans, in that moment, showed none. Jonas emphasized that it was a collective decision across Earth's leadership, not just a single dictator's order. The entire species demanded justice. Jonas exhaled shakily, glancing at Evelyn. It changed us. We had always known we could be violent if needed, but that war taught us the depth of our rage. We've spent the centuries since trying to ensure we never again let heartbreak turn us into that kind of unstoppable destroyer. The Droll never realized the line they were crossing until it was too late. Evelyn asked if humanity regretted the scale of destruction. Jonas paused. "It's complicated," he said softly. "We regret that Tantalus was destroyed. We regret that so many had to die. But do we regret avenging our murdered colony? No. The Droll threatened our existence in the most brutal way. We answered with finality." Evelyn left the library with a heavy heart and a deeper understanding of humankind. Their empathy ran deep, their capacity for compassion considerable. But provoke them in a way that ripped out their hearts, and they would unleash a fury so vast that entire empires could be lost in its wake. She decided to meet with Earth's newly formed Interstellar Council. While Earth had retreated from certain alliances, they now engaged in measured diplomacy, always with an undercurrent of caution. Evelyn reached out for an appointment, explaining that she was writing a confidential historical account of the Droll War. To her surprise, they granted her a meeting. She suspected they wanted to ensure she understood the official stance, that Earth did not seek to replicate the Droll's fate with anyone else. The council greeted her politely in a domed building overlooking lush gardens. A council representative named Ambassador Riva carried herself with stately grace. After reviewing Evelyn's credentials and confirming her sincerity, Riva explained Earth's current philosophy: we are prepared for peace. We are prepared to defend ourselves. We do not wish to raise the old ghosts unless absolutely necessary. Let the galaxy note we never again launched that kind of total war, even when provoked by lesser threats. But the memory remains, and so does the capacity. That is all we can say on the matter. Evelyn bowed respectfully, acknowledging the delicate balance. Then she dared to ask if there were any Drolls still alive, scattered among the stars. Rumors sometimes surfaced about exiled Droll enclaves living in secrecy. Riva hesitated. We've received no formal contact from them, if they exist. We suspect some fled to uncharted regions. We do not actively pursue them. The general consensus is that if they remain hidden, they have chosen isolation rather than face possible human reprisal or condemnation from other species." She paused, her face reflecting genuine sorrow. "I doubt they would find forgiveness or acceptance here. Too much blood was shed." Evelyn nodded slowly. She wondered if any Droll out there held on to bitterness, waiting for a moment to exact some twisted revenge. But she realized that would be madness. After the Droll's humiliating defeat, what chance could a ragtag group of survivors have? If they tried anything, Earth would retaliate once more, and the cycle of destruction might continue. It was best, perhaps, that the Droll remain hidden. Over the next weeks, Evelyn quietly compiled her account, weaving the caretaker's logs, Tantalus's memorial records, and her interviews with the humans. She did not craft a sensational story. Instead, she told the measured truth. The Droll's attempt to break Earth's spirit by annihilating Tantalus backfired, unleashing a wave of fury that obliterated the Droll Empire in record time. Humanity's unstoppable force was fueled by grief and rage, a perfect storm of unity in the face of unimaginable loss. She concluded that there was no magical superweapon or cosmic trick at play, just the relentless determination of a species who refused to let atrocities against their own go unanswered. The final portion of her text questioned how the galaxy might handle a future crisis that tested human resolve. She suggested that Earth's history showed them as peaceful unless provoked beyond measure, at which point they would transform into an avenging storm. Evelyn urged other species to understand that heartbreak, to never push Earth into that corner again. It was a narrative that might dissuade any empire from repeating the Droll's folly. Yet she also recognized that it painted Earth as a terrifying foe. She asked the caretaker droid for its perspective on the final version, as if seeking moral balance from a machine shaped by Droll code. The caretaker's voice was emotionless but precise. The Droll sowed cruelty, the humans returned it magnified. Your account reflects reality. That was as close to an endorsement as she would get. Before concluding her stay on Earth, she arranged one last journey to the Tantalus grave, wanting to witness the debris ring with fresh eyes. This time, she was accompanied by Jonas and Commander Porter. They boarded her ship and flew the short distance to the silent orbit, each man carrying a small token to leave in remembrance. Evelyn guided them carefully through the drifting shards of planet. Standing together at a forward viewport, they gazed at the ring. Jonas placed a small figurine of a mother and child on the console, while Porter recited a quiet vow of memory. Evelyn realized that, for them, Tantalus was not an abstract historical event. It was immediate, always just under the surface. Porter murmured something about how the Droll had singled out Tantalus because it was considered soft. He repeated that they expected to break humanity's will. Evelyn turned to him, softly asking, "Do you think the Droll ever realized, in their final moments, that they had made a grave error?" Porter's answer came swiftly, "Yes. I'm certain they did. But by then, they had no path left but to face the consequences." Jonas nodded somberly. Evelyn studied their faces, seeing sorrow and resolve. There was no glee in the destruction they had wrought, only the knowledge that a line had been crossed, forcing them to become something they never wished to be. She thought of the caretaker's words, they believed heartbreak would destroy humanity. Instead, heartbreak made them unstoppable. She understood, then, that no matter how advanced the Droll were, no matter how cunning their strategies, they had overlooked the explosive nature of human grief transmuted into fury. After they left the ring, Jonas and Porter departed for their respective homes. Evelyn felt a profound sense of closure mixed with reverence. She had uncovered the untold details of humanity's darkest war, the final spark that triggered total annihilation of the Droll. She considered the great hush in the galaxy surrounding that event. Many species suspected that humankind's outward civility was just the surface of a far more dangerous power. The Droll had been the last species to provoke that fury, leaving behind a cautionary legacy. Now Evelyn understood the lesson clearly: do not rip away what a species holds most dear and expect them to crumble. They might unify and become your downfall. She believed that telling this truth, carefully and respectfully, would serve as a reminder that some lines should never be crossed, no matter how confident or advanced an empire might be. On her last night on Earth, she visited a quiet lakeside park, the caretaker droid at her side, scanning the starry sky. Nearby, a group of human children laughed while chasing each other. Evelyn watched them, feeling a pang of emotion. Tantalus had once been full of children like these, living ordinary lives until tragedy struck. A gentle wind stirred the grass, and she whispered to the caretaker, "It's good that they're still able to laugh. Sometimes I fear the memory of war might consume them." The caretaker's mechanical voice responded, "Humans have a remarkable way of healing, but they do not forget. It is part of their resilience." Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. Yes, resilience might be the key word. From Tantalus's ashes, Earth had emerged with an iron resolve never to let such a massacre happen again. That was, ultimately, the reason they withheld details from the galaxy. They did not want other powers to test them, nor did they want a new race repeating the Drall's mistakes, only to spark another wave of unstoppable vengeance. Evelyn stared at the moon's reflection on the lake, feeling a strange sense of peace. In the morning, she said her goodbyes, promising to keep the caretaker in a place of respect. Commander Porter gave her a firm handshake. Jonas offered a small data crystal containing personal tributes from Tantalus descendants. Ambassador Riva met her briefly before takeoff, reminding her to exercise discretion. Evelyn reassured them she would not sensationalize the truth. Then she took flight, carrying with her the most complete account ever assembled of the Drall War. As her ship broke atmosphere, she felt a swirl of emotions: sadness for the colony lost, admiration for the unstoppable spirit that avenged it, and relief that no other species had triggered that fury in the centuries since. Her jump to faster-than-light travel gave her a momentary sense of disorientation. When her vision cleared, the caretaker's glowing eyes regarded her. She asked it softly, "Do you regret that your makers tried to crush humanity?" The droid paused for a long time. "I was constructed to serve. I have no concept of regret as you do. Yet I observe that the Drall erred in underestimating the emotional capacity of humans. They saw it as a weakness. It was, in fact, their end." As the stars streaked into lines around the ship, Evelyn sealed her notes, reflecting on how the galaxy might have changed if Tantalus had never been attacked. Perhaps the Drall would still exist, competing with Earth in a more standard conflict. Perhaps humans would not have discovered the depths of their own capacity for ruthless revenge. But history was not shaped by what-ifs. History was shaped by acts of unspeakable cruelty and the unstoppable fury that followed. She realized that if this story were ever fully revealed, many would shy away from believing it. They might prefer to think that humans had used exotic superweapons or allied with hidden cosmic entities. The plain truth, that heartbreak had fueled them to harness every resource, every ounce of technology, and every measure of will, was almost too terrifying. Because it could happen again, under the right circumstances. She felt a shiver run through her. In all her travels, she had never encountered a species so quick to love, nor so swift to turn that love into a destructive force once it was violated. Now she fully grasped the caution in Commander Porter's eyes. It was not a threat, it was the knowledge that Earth had once torn the stars asunder, and they never wished to do so again. Weeks later, in her Narasai homeworld, Evelyn compiled the final draft of her account, labeling it the Untold HFY story, the last species that provoked human fury. She encrypted it, leaving instructions that it be safeguarded in the Narasai Vault of Histories. She placed the caretaker droid under respectful custody there, to be activated only by researchers who understood the weight of these revelations. She did not desire to stoke fear or encourage more wars. She merely sought to preserve the truth. In the quiet hush of the vault's antechamber, she listened to her own heartbeat. Once upon a time, the Droll believed they held the galaxy by the throat, that no species could withstand their cunning. They had no inkling that a single act could unify billions of human hearts into one unstoppable tide. She said a silent prayer for Tantalus, for the families who never saw the next sunrise, and for the countless Droll who never anticipated the storm they had kindled. She wondered if the caretaker would be the last relic of the Droll's arrogance, or if somewhere, Droll enclaves still remembered their empire's fall. If they did, perhaps they realized by now that it was Tantalus that sealed their doom, that prodding the core of human empathy was an irreversible mistake. Evelyn placed her hand on the caretaker's dusty shell. "Thank you," she whispered, acknowledging that, without it, she would never have learned the full truth. The droid's eyes flickered as it responded, "You are preserving what must be preserved. My duty is fulfilled." Then it powered down, leaving Evelyn alone in the subtle dimness of the vault. She gazed at the sealed data crystal on her desk, weighing its importance. Would future generations glean wisdom, or would they see only a cautionary tale too grim to bear? That was a question for historians yet to come. For her part, Evelyn had done what she set out to do: gather the fragments of a lost war, piece them together, and reveal how heartbreak turned into the unstoppable fury that obliterated the Droll. She could not have imagined a more powerful testament to the raw force of human emotion. Returning to her small living quarters, she felt a strange kind of contentment. She had not simply researched a historical footnote, she had touched the raw nerve that defined humanity in the cosmos. She settled by her window, watching the Narasai city lights below. She could hear laughter floating up from the streets, children calling to each other just as the children on Earth had in that lakeside park. She closed her eyes and pictured Tantalus once more, imagining how lively it must have been before the Droll's cowardly strike. Tears slid down her cheeks as she realized just how fragile peace could be in a galaxy brimming with pride and ambition. Then she remembered the unstoppable columns of human soldiers pressing forward under the moonlight, and a small flame of hope lit within her. Perhaps the galaxy would learn from that tragedy. Perhaps no one would dare provoke Earth's fury again. Still, a quiet voice in her head reminded her that tragedies often repeat when history's lessons are ignored. Maybe her record could help prevent such a cycle. She typed a final line in her private notes: "We survive by honoring both love and fury." The Droll saw only an opportunity to manipulate emotion. They never grasped that emotion, love twisted into rage, is the mightiest weapon of all. She saved the file and sank into her chair, letting the hum of distant Narasai traffic lull her. The caretaker droid remained silent in the vault, its memory brimming with Halar's grim arrogance, a reminder that hubris leads to ruin. On some level, Evelyn pitied Halar. He was brilliant enough to concoct a grand plan, yet ignorant of the depths of human resolve. His final words in the logs had revealed a man consumed by disbelief at the unstoppable vengeance closing in on him. Maybe that was the last lesson: never assume another's heartbreak is the same as defeat. Sometimes, it is the spark that ignites the unstoppable. The next morning, Evelyn left her quarters and walked into the bright Narasai sunshine, feeling simultaneously burdened and liberated. She had uncovered the darkest secret of Earth's past, or at least the darkest many in the galaxy had ever witnessed. And now it was recorded carefully, awaiting any future generation that had the courage to know. She prayed that it would be read as a caution rather than a challenge. Should any empire interpret it as a dare, believing themselves superior to the Droll, they might discover the truth the hard way. Humanity had not lost its capacity for fury, it merely contained it, burying it beneath a desire for peace. But if threatened in that most visceral way again, who knew what monstrosities might be unleashed? The caretaker had phrased it best: heartbreak transmuted into wrath can devastate entire star systems. With that solemn reflection, Evelyn boarded a shuttle to the Narasai Council. She would deliver a confidential briefing, following proper channels. Then she would move on to her next project, perhaps one less steeped in violence. She owed it to herself to remember that the galaxy also housed wonders of art, science, and unity. The Drawl War was a single, if catastrophic, chapter in the cosmic saga. As the shuttle rose, she saw the city spread out below, the pinkish sunlight reflecting off spires of alien architecture. Life went on, hopefully wiser for the knowledge she carried. She let her mind drift back to the voice of Jonas, describing how Tantalus families were broadcast to their loved ones in their final seconds. She imagined the heartbreak fueling every bullet, every missile the humans used to strike back. She understood at last that unstoppable fury was not an exaggeration. It was the reason Earth had become the last species the Drawl ever provoked. Her final action before stepping into the council building was to deactivate all playback of the caretaker's logs. She had heard enough. The caretaker would remain an artifact of caution rather than a propaganda tool. The Drawl's cruelty needed no further stage. If asked about the war, she would speak the truth, quietly but firmly. It had been sparked by ultimate tragedy and ended by unstoppable fury. The Drawl had gambled on the fragility of the human spirit, and in doing so, they shattered their own empire. Evelyn whispered a small vow to the memory of Tantalus as she crossed through the high-arched doors. She vowed that no one reading her account would romanticize that horror. It was a lesson in restraint as much as in rage. And as she disappeared into the Narasi Council's corridors, she pictured, for just a moment, the field of broken Drawl war machines in that old black and white footage. A silent testament that some lines, once crossed, unleash consequences beyond any empire's control.